Yo guys, what is good? I hope you're all doing absolutely amazing and are trading safely in the markets. It's your boy VGOK and I'm back with another video for you guys today. Now in this video I'm going to be looking at over the indices and the Forex pairs that I like to look at, pretty much a market outlook, and I'm also going to be having a look over the news as well. Now I appreciate that you guys would have found this video a bit more useful had I have released it on Sunday. However, I've reserved that privilege for those of you that are in my private mentorship who get to see it live at the time of the recording. Now obviously if that's something that interests you and you're wanting to know more about that, then do drop me a message on my Instagram. The link to my Instagram is going to be in the description below, and just drop me a message saying mentorship and we can discuss things further. But with that all being said, let's jump straight into the market outlook. So starting off this week's market outlook, of course as always we're going to start off by looking into the news that's coming up for this week, and compared to the week we've just had, we've had amazing amount of high impact news, obviously because of it being NFP week. We had the US dollar unemployment rates coming out, that was last Friday. Also with the Fed Chair Powell speaking as well on the Wednesday, and a whole host of other news that we've just had. But compared to this week, obviously the one that we're coming into, a lot less busy, a lot less high impact news coming into play to really worry about. But in terms of looking at it, the main ones to be really look at is obviously if you trade Aussie dollar and Canadian dollar, then you've got interest rates being released for those two currencies. Aussie dollar on Tuesday, it is at 3:30 AM UK time, so in the middle of the Asian session, and for Canadian dollar it's 3 PM UK time, so sort of in the middle of New York session. But they will definitely be causing big movements for those two currencies respectively. So if you do trade those pairs, then please do take care trading those around those times on those days, and expect some big movements, because obviously anything interest rate related, cash rate, all this sort of stuff, they all mean the same thing. Obviously you can see here the different currencies, different countries call it different things. So Aussie dollar calls it the cash rate, you have the overnight rate, I know the US dollar calls it the federal funds rate, the interbank rate, whatever it is, they all mean the same thing. They're all talking about the interest rates essentially. But yeah, definitely expect some sort of volatility and some fast movements around those currency pairs on Tuesday and Wednesday. On Monday we have this 3 PM US dollar news, this ISM services PMI. We have traded this in the past before, and it has been quite successful, so we'll definitely be looking into that as well. But I think the main news is going to be on that Friday at 1:30 PM, nicely 30 minutes after New York Open, and we've got the core PPI sort of data coming out for the dollar, so hopefully that will be a really nice news event to trade around, and we'll look to sort of get our entries in ideally before New York Open or around New York Open so then we can hopefully see the US dollar news sort of propel our trades further into profit. So yeah, hopefully we'll be able to see that for the Friday as well. But on the whole, quite more of a quiet week this week in terms of the news. So hopefully that makes it a bit more of a simple week to trade. I know last week was fairly complicated and there were a lot of big moves. There's one or two that we missed out on and one or two that we caught, but the majority of this week should be a bit more simpler, I think. So yeah, jumping into the analysis, let's start things off by looking at AUD USD. Now obviously you can tell from just looking at the charts on the hourly time frame, all the volatility that we had last week, we had big volatility coming up on that Wednesday over here in Asian session for AUD, and then obviously on the Friday we had the NFP news release causing this big drop of price down in here. We did have a point of interest based upon that, which we did get a reaction into. So this area here, you could look at it as a drop, redistribution of price in here to then drop off again, or a drop based drop that takes out this previous areas of demand. Price retraces all the way back up into there quite nicely, and as you can see on the 30-minute and the 45-minute time frame, the actual drop based drop point of interest in here gets respected nicely. The first drop down, the second drop down, it does come back up slightly higher, taking out any liquidity above this wick, and then a further drop down afterwards with a strong imbalance. So What I'm expecting for AUDUSD for the start of next week, I want to be seeing it, obviously if it does look to gap, ideally we want to see it gap below these wicks in here to make sure that we get that break of structure in, and then we want to see a slow retracement up to these new supply zones, which I'm going to go over in just a sec, to get that further continued sell down into this area. Obviously we've got all of this imbalance in here to look for targeting, and there is further imbalance down here that has not been filled in that we could potentially jump down into. So hopefully we can get into sort of that area and see some accumulation forming in there. But at the moment, following this current little downtrend that we're in, and we'll see if that will actually help out in terms of getting any entries. And then as we go into the lower time frames, the 30-minute, 15-minute, and the 5, we can see what this price action is in more detail. Right here we can see that this went slightly lower than this area here, so essentially capturing liquidity, big movement upwards. It then retraces into this small imbalance in there to extend its way higher. So definitely if we get any break below this area, we should be, you know, looking good for the bearish sort of point of interest, because this went on to create that higher high. So looking further into it, we do see in this movement down, a nice break of structure below. If we change it to the line graph, we can definitely see the structure a lot clearer. As you can see, the line graph basically takes the bodies of the candles into account more than the wicks. So we can see that's the majority of the price movement, and it's a lot easier to see the actual market structure by looking at the line graph instead of the candles. So yeah, nice looking break of structure to the downside, and if we look into the 45-minute, we can start to see, you know, a clear buy to sell candle, strong buy candle up with a wick rejection at the top in there as well, so showing fast movement, and then a fast movement down, as you can see with this imbalance creation over here as well. So it's pretty much everything we like to look for. Now it all depends on how market opens. We don't want it to come up too early. We want to look to be trading within our kill zones, so the colored zones that you can see over here. And then we'll be able to actually you know, look to capitalize off that. But that's what I'm looking into for AUDUSD. Now of course we can't ignore this as a demand zone as well, so I think looking into the 15-minute, we've got a nice rally based rally in there as well. And usually when you're looking at rally based rallies or drop based drops, the bases within those candlestick formations, ideally you want them to be small low volume candles. So ideally any doji candles that look like this, small candles that look like this as well, if they are making up your base candles, and then the rallies or the drops are more imbalance filled candles, more strong you know, full bodied candles, that's ideally what you want to see normally. So with AUDUSD, that's a good rally based rally on the 15-minute. On the 5-minute, you can see exactly the manipulation that's happening within there. You know, it's nicely going up, it challenges this high. All of a sudden you've got a random drop down and then a fast movement up. So it's that random drop down and fast movement up, which is that manipulation. And on the 5-minute is a nice sell to buy candle within there. So definitely going to set another alert around that point as well, to potentially see some early accumulation in there. If price does decide to continue going down in here, we can maybe look to catch the retracement counter trend trade upwards to get back into this supply zone. So just preparing for all the eventualities for that on AU. Moving on to EURUSD as well. Now compared to AUDUSD from the NFP drop, as you can see here, it then retraced back up, and then it's continuing that downwards movement. Now compared to EURUSD, that downwards movement from NFP has not really sort of continued. We had a small retracement down in there, but then it's looking to continue its way back up into that higher time frame supply zone which we have over here. So keeping that in mind, and also looking at the 2-hour time frame, we did see the drop off from NFP for EURUSD. It got into this demand zone and successfully actually, you know, gave a reaction to the upside, which I wasn't quite expecting after seeing, you know, the aggressiveness of how it went in. But nevertheless, it did give a good reaction to the upside again. And then looking into the lower time frames in terms of the demand, definitely something in here I want to have a look at in a bit more detail as well. So looking at the 5-minute and the 3-minute, we can definitely see, you know, where the next structural break was. So definitely, again, if it doesn't reach back down into this area, you know, there's this sell to buy region in here. If it doesn't reach that, and failing that, you know, we can definitely look into these areas right here for this rally base rally area right in there. So definitely want to be looking into there. As you can see, it took out this previous area of supply in here. So we'll be looking into there for the demand for EURUSD. And the other thing I want to check is obviously how market opens. If this, if market decides to gap upwards, you know, maybe make liquidity with this trend line and then manipulate and then drop down, then that could be a nice, a very odd looking, I would definitely say, distribution forming. If anything, this looks more like a reaccumulation after the big drop down to take out any further liquidity, ruling out any late buyers from the day before, even the same day as well here, any buyers. So taking all of those out and then returning all the way back up in the same day. So definitely a big manipulation all of last Friday, so we need to definitely see how that affects you know, future movements. But definitely, you know, if we can see a distribution form in this supply zone at the top here, that'll definitely be worth looking into some sell positions. So as you can see, it's the daily supply, which is what this is based off of, this last buy to sell candle. And then when we go into the 4-hour time frame and actually have a closer look into that zone, we can actually see there's a nice 4-hour buy to sell candle with a followed by a clean imbalance which hasn't really been filled in yet. So I've put a line at that imbalance fill just in there. Now of course there is this higher zone up here as well, which we could potentially get into and then sell off. But of course we'll just sort of play each zone, you know, as price gets to it. We're going to be you know, very reactionary to the data, not sort of you know, just impulsive in our entries. And as we can see from that strong movement upwards, again, I won't be surprised if we do make it past this this area, and to be honest, I won't be surprised if we look to take out this daily supply as well. But of course, we're gonna have to wait and see how price develops and, you know, starts to form in this area. So that's what I'm pretty much looking at for EURUSD. Let's move on to GBPUSD as well. So starting from the daily time frame, we can see that GBPUSD is definitely very bullish now. It's been challenging all these previous you know, significant lower highs, and the recent one to be challenging is this one right in here. As you can see, price is definitely challenging that area, getting into that region over there. Now in terms of higher time frame supply zones on the daily time frame, what I can immediately see right in here is it's got to be this area. We've got a clean imbalance in this region here. This lower high goes on to create this lower low. As you can see, this lower high creates this lower low, and we have had mitigation of this imbalance in here, creating that downwards movement here. So all of this is all sort of dealt with. This is also dealt with as well, and I think this will be the next one to really sort of take a look at in terms of higher time frame supply. So just labeling that on in there. So daily supply zone. So that looks pretty good there. So we'll keep that labeled on there, and then going into the lower time frames, what we can see for GBPUSD, pretty similar to what we saw on EURUSD. So there is that big drop off from Friday's NFP news release in there, and then an instant move back upwards to that same area. So looking at what it's really sort of reacted off of, as you can see here is the main supply that caused this whole sort of retracement down here, this slow movement down. And looking at what took that area out, if we draw a line across to the top of that, to the top of that area, so anything above that is a break of structure in this movement upwards, and we can see exactly what took that area out. It's this rally formation in there. So looking into the 2-hour time frame, what looks the best in that area for the demand, it was probably this 2-hour. Now I don't know if it's made equal lows with that wick. We're gonna have to take a look into that in a bit more detail, but for the moment that's what's pretty much caused that movement upwards. So potentially even coming lower if they are equal lows, so we'll keep an eye on for that right now as well. But as we are looking deeper and deeper, it does look like it took out the whole of that zone in there. So I think more than anything that's gonna be you know, a degree of equal lows with that wick and then this wick. So potentially if we do come back down, this demand zone is looking very attractive because we've already got liquidity built up over there. So we know we're expecting a sell to buy candle. We'll wait for the proof in this zone, and if we do get it, then we'll look to jump into some sort of long positions for GBPUSD and sort of continuing you know, this bullish movement up that we're experiencing on GU. So that would be nice to see if we can get that. So for the buy side, that looks pretty good, and on the hourly time frame you can see there's a nice sell to buy candle which takes out obviously this previous significant supply zone in here, pushing price down. Obviously these ones were pushing price down as well, so there's potential areas lower down in here, but this is the first one we're going to be monitoring, so definitely looking into that area as well. Now on the off chance that this may be a this is just a mitigation or a liquidity capture below these lows in here and then a further movement upwards, there are a couple zones which I still want to have a look at in terms of the demand side. So if we look into the 1 minute, I just want to sort of have a look exactly how this came down, and it does look like there's still equal lows sitting below at this point in here. So ideally, if it doesn't look to mitigate you know, and retrace into this area here, so just putting a Fibonacci on just to get a rough guide of an area where it could retrace to. So if that was the size of the impulse, ideally, you know, you'd be looking anywhere from 61.8 all the way to 88.6 for a retracement, and then the more refined zone would be in here, the 71 to 78%. So anywhere around here for you know, continued movement to the upside. So just putting an alert around there. And obviously if price does get into that region, then we'll look to sort of play it, but then keeping it a bit more simpler than that, let's see the 30-minute time frame. I think that looks good. So getting rid of the Fibonacci again, so that will be that deep retracement into this last wick that we've just established there from the fib, and potentially looking at you know, this area here simply as a rally base, rally formation for a potential demand zone. So let's see if that will work out as well. But yeah, a lot of liquidity building up on this top side now with all this rejections, these wick rejections here, big rejection down there, it's come back up, rejecting again, rejecting again. So whatever's sitting up here, a lot of liquidity will be waiting to see if we do get a distribution to drop down again for that GU, similar to like we saw for EU as well. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it for GBPUSD in terms of what areas I'm looking for. So moving on to DXY. And as you can see again from you know, the Friday's movement, it's got into this demand zone, so I feel like that is on the daily time frame. Let's take a look again. So yeah, this daily time frame, we had equal lows formed over here with this wick and this candle over here. Price has then dropped down into this area, and I think NFP gave that first big spike up from this zone. So I think, was it the daily or the week? I think this weekly candle, so this sell to buy candle on the weekly is what the whole POI is based upon. And then going down into the daily and the 4 hour, we can definitely start to see now in a lot more detail, you know, NFP actually caused this big movement to the upside. So definitely a good sign to see that the dollar may return to being bullish again. It's given a good bullish reaction from a demand zone. So definitely want to see what happens in that region there. And as we can see, price has retraced back down into this imbalance fill region, so seeing whether we're going to get that continued movement up or whether it's looking for more more liquidity capturing areas within this demand zone. So just having a look into this as well, is there a trend line forming? I think there potentially was in here, and potentially if we go below it again once more, you know, retracing into this demand zone over here. So if we look to potentially this area, that bottom wick area there, it can punch into there and then go up, that would be a really nice accumulation forming. But I'm going to keep this as the whole zone in here, just to sort of keep it a bit more prepared for anything else that happens. And as we sort of scroll and zoom in on price, we can see that this sell to buy region here has not been filled in, and yeah, this one is that sell to buy that it has come to and started to consolidate in. So definitely the trend line in there is the one that's active. It's come into there, it's already done a little sell to buy of the trend line, but failed to really break structure. So I'll definitely want to see what happens when price can definitely come above this region, ultimately above this region here. That would be the ideal break of structure up, and then we can look to play those bullish dollar biases. But yeah, let's see if we can see price getting into here first and then going up. But yeah, we're looking into that for DXY in terms of the demand side of things. And the supply side of things, if it's valid that this base drop in here, obviously price has come into there and given a good reaction to the downside, I think it's pretty simple that we're going to be looking for our supply zones within there as well. So just making this smaller because obviously that's been invalidated now. And then in terms of this area here, yeah, I think on the 30-minute time frame will be best. So the supply zone that exists within here is definitely something I want to have a look at. Let's see if we can get any distribution forming within there. If we can, then obviously we'll be looking to place you know, bearish dollar style trades. Yeah, looking into there, obviously a nice buy to sell followed by a clean big imbalance as well. So we've got those zones marked out and everything's looking good for dollar as well, for DXY. Moving on to NZD USD, all these obviously, as you can tell by now, all these NU, GU, AU, EU, they all look pretty similar. So once you've got an analysis on one of them, you've pretty much got analysis on most of them. Obviously they're not all going to correlate equally, but you know, in terms of the main zones, you know, they do look pretty good. But yeah, as you can see, NU retracing deep into this 3-day supply zone, and I do yeah, this one has obviously been invalidated, but there is another ultimate zone up here at this blue line, which I think it's just tapped off of, so we're gonna have another look into that as well. Let's go down into the daily time frame. So yeah, as you can see on the daily time frame, there is an imbalance fill in that region there roughly, which price is coming into quite quickly. So I want to have another look into that again, see if it does decide to distribute around that region. If it does, then we have a big selling opportunity to the downside, ideally taking out this low, which would be you know, pretty much ideal. If we go to the daily, I think probably let's go back to the 3-day time frame. It may, if it does do that, if it does distribute in here to come into that region and then distribute and then look to sell off, ideally if we can take out this low and ideally challenge this area as well and get into this ultimate bullish zone here, which I think is on the monthly. Yeah, this monthly time frame, we've got a rally, sorry, a drop base rally in there, which price hasn't quite got into. Now, unless my zone is slightly off, this could have been the mitigation. Bullish break of structure, price has come into a very discounted price region for that and experiencing a big strong rejection to the upside. So if I am wrong, then it's probably already ready to go and we're waiting for a retracement down and then to a discounted price region then for further buys. Now if that is the case, then we'll have to have another look into these things here, and as you can see, the bullish bias on the way up has been sort of respected quite nicely the whole way up. See, this zone here was nicely respected, this zone here was nicely respected, and then it's probably from here onwards we haven't really seen a lot of respect. So probably we'll be looking into that region there. If we put a demand zone within there, that should be the ultimate one in there, but obviously if we can look to sell down to that region, we should at least be able to capitalize on a decent number of pips. You know, that's like a 500 pip movement, so if we can get, you know, even a 5 pip, sort of 5 to 10 pip stop loss and, you know, have a swing trade to hold that long, that would be really nice to see. But yeah, it'll definitely look to take some time. It'll be a very long-term trade, but there'll definitely be some intraday moves in between there which we can look to take as well. But yeah, that looks pretty good for NU. Let's take a look at Gbpjpy as well. Now the thing with GJ is it has been more sort of flat in its movement, consolidation, you know, battling these zones multiple times. So it'll be interesting to see exactly how this is going to be starting to move as well. Was looking into this on the daily time frame, this buy to sell candle in there, it has had a mitigation in here, second mitigation in here to then further drop off, but then it is experiencing these bullish wicks up as well. So I think what might be the best, just have a clean analysis on this. Let's get rid of all these other smaller zones in there, and just sort of clean up the chart to have a fresh look at this. Now the first thing that I've just spotted on there is this daily rally base rally in here has received nice respect of this candle, and it's, you know, pretty much made it back up into this region, so almost equal highs again up there, creating more liquidity. And as you can see, price has retraced back down into this region, so definitely going to be looking for a demand zone somewhere in here, and it looks like it's kind of reacting already with that big wick rejection on the daily, so want to keep an eye on that as well. On the 4 hour, as we go down, there is a nice looking imbalance in here, which is just about filled in, as you can see. So if I zoom into this area here, we can see that there is this small area in between these two blue lines where the imbalance was still not filled in. So that small area in there where price could potentially jump back into, and as we see how it got into there, it jumped into that quite nicely. and then ran its way back up again. So really nice strong reaction. So I do think the bullish bias is still good for GJ, with that imbalance for nicely happening in there. The demand zone within there, I would say definitely within here. So that's the zone that it's reacted off of, and as we go into lower time frames, if that is a good reaction, we should be ready for early entry. So we just need to check if this is a valid reaction, if it's got a break of structure on these smaller time frames. So checking on the hourly time frame first of all, from first glance it does look like a good movement upwards, a good break of structure as well. And as we go lower down into the 30-minute and the 15-minute time frames, we can definitely see the structural points a lot more clearer. So we can see, you know, we've got these highs, lows, lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high over here, and then this lower low. So the last significant lower high which created a lower low is this one in here, and this candle in here pretty much broke that structure. So I think it's this area in here is going to be pretty key. Looking into there for GJ, and yeah, we'll look into that zone there, and I think there may have been some sort of trend line in here potentially, maybe not, but yeah, some sort of a momentum trend line happening in there, and that sell to buy candle which sort of invalidates the trend line and then manipulates it and then goes to the upside quite strongly. Looking down into the 5-minute, you can see a nice imbalanced area there in that same area, so that's good, that's looking good. 3-minute, we can see, you know, this rally, slightly unorthodox in how it looks, but you know, it still does look pretty good. And as we go down into the 1-minute, we can definitely see, you know, the manipulation candle that we're looking to play within. So this sell to buy candle within there looks pretty nice. So definitely want to be putting alerts down in there, and another one here, so we know when it takes out this low. Ideally, if we can get into some really clean buy positions in here, we'd be looking to hold them all the way up to take out this high again, ideally. That should be nice to see. Now obviously in this movement here, there's definitely going to be some supply to contend with, so that will be our, you know, partial take profit areas. First off, it's going to be this drop base drop. That looks pretty nice to me. We can definitely see in that area we have had this drop, redistribution of price, and then a drop off over here which took out this previous demand zone in here, which caused this higher movement up. So that looks pretty good for the supply zone in there for now. Let's go back up to the 5-minute time frame and have another look. Yeah, so that looks pretty good. On the 3-minute, you can really see a nice drop, this doji candle acting as the base, and then this further drop off. So probably this as a 3-minute drop base drop looks pretty good. And then that nicely lines up with this buy to sell candle as well. So that rough area there, and I think if we go into the 5-minute, yeah, it's that main area which still hasn't been filled in terms of imbalance as well. So I think I do quite like the look of that area there. If you wanted to make it a bit more simpler, then you could just sort of incorporate this whole buy to sell candle in there. And I think if we go into a higher, slightly higher time frame, on the 10-minute, you can see this as a drop base drop as well. So it does depend on sort of how you view your zones. If you want to keep it simpler, then just keep it like that. Obviously look to rename it as well so it corresponds to the right time frame. So that is now a 10-minute drop base drop. That probably looks a bit nicer as well, in all honesty. So we'll be looking into there, a nice imbalance in there as well, so definitely potential sells in there as well. And just having a look at how it's mitigated and stuff. Yeah, it's a nice drop down, definite break of structure below here, obviously in this movement, so probably further supply zones in here to contend with as well. So let's take a look at that as well. Yeah, nice 3-minute candle within here. So this area looks pretty nice. And yeah, let's put another alert in there. But yeah, that area looks pretty nice as well. We'll see if that sort of gives any respect to there. But ultimately, I think this buy zone is going to be the one that works out most for GJ. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it for GJ as well. Yeah, moving on to $JPY. And as we can see, this is a really nice bullish movement from this 3-day demand zone. So checking the 3-day demand zone in there, we've had, I think this was the original 3-day demand zone, and I must have narrowed it down and didn't relabel it, but yeah, so that was the original 3-day demand zone, this sell to buy candle. Price has got into there very strongly, very aggressively, but now we have to monitor to see if we get an accumulation. And then going down to the daily time frame, yeah, as we can see, I think that's when I narrowed it down to this candle in here. So we've got this sort of rally base rally that takes out this previous supply, and this acting as that main manipulation candle, this little black doji on the daily. And as we go into the 4-hour time frame, you know, we can definitely see the zone, you know, there's that clean imbalance that it would look to fill in. So let's put a line on the imbalance fill there and have a look at how it's gone through. Almost there. It may want to just sweep liquidity below that current low, getting into there, and then a further movement upwards. But for a first touch of a demand zone to get that strong of a reaction, that strong of an engulfing candle, obviously caused by NFP, you know, that's a good sign, you know, showing us that this demand zone is going to be pretty much valid. We just need to wait for the better price action now. So let's clean up all of this as well, and I think we need to look into this a bit more. On the hourly time frame, you know, obviously the clean breaker structure up in this candle here, above this area, all looks pretty nice. As we look into the 30-minute time frame, it's pretty much retraced into this imbalance fill, so that's going to be our first obvious sort of point of interest for the buys. If we look on the 5-minute time frame, I think that looks pretty nice in terms of this candle in there, that area slowly, you know, going flat. This is how you want to see price approaching all of our zones. Comes down aggressively, but then it slows down, and then it starts to move a lot more flat. That's how we want to sort of see price approach most of our sort of points of interest. You know, it's starting to accumulate basically. So if we look into the 3-minute and the 1-minute time frames, we can definitely see how this is sort of made up. Again, no breaker structure on the smaller time frames here. As you can see, lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low, and then we need to break above here at least to see a breaker structure. So, and we haven't quite got that yet, so I'm thinking we are going to push down lower unless we do break up now, or if we manipulate, you know, above these highs, getting into this sort of little rally based drop supply zone. So something that could happen on the very, very short term, because we are looking on the 1-minute time frame now. Something reacting into there, you know, taking out liquidity over there for a further drop down. I probably won't be looking to trade that because it's quite close to current price, so if market gaps up to here, it's going to be hard to catch a sell. Spreads may be a bit wild as well. But yeah, ultimately be looking for a liquidity capture under these lows in here, getting into this demand zone a bit more, and then looking for a break of structure, accumulation to form, and then looking to play our entries for UJ buys. That'd probably be ideal. Obviously on the 5-minute, the imbalance fill is going to be in there, so a lot more space for it to go into. But of course, you know, we are still thinking about this as well, potentially coming below this and then dropping low as well. So it might be worth playing the sells, because if this demand zone here doesn't hold, we can look to capitalize all of this as well. So all the way down to here, it could be another 70 pip movement down potentially. So ideally, if we can look to hedge in both ways, you know, if we get the sells, confirmation for sells, then we'll place some sells, we'll be inside for the shorts, and then also get some confirmation for buys once price gets into the right zones. If that all goes well, we can place some buys, and then, you know, basically hedged our way in both sides. Yeah, at the moment that's looking pretty good. Pretty happy with those zones there. Let's end things off with looking at the indices as well. So let's take a look at US30 to start with, and of course, yeah, this has had some crazy movement. So from the original 3-day supply zone, which we've had marked on for quite a while for US30 now, price came into it nicely there and gave that big initial drop off. It reacted nicely into this weekly demand. Obviously this sell to buy on the weekly looks really nice, reacted so nicely within there, big strong push off into there again. So I think if this is the second mitigation of this 3-day supply, ideally getting into this blue line over here, which I believe is an imbalance fill on the daily. So getting into that region, if that's enough to start moving it back down again into this discounted price region over here, we can look for more demand zones in this region to play more bullish moves. Obviously that's a lot long term, because we are looking at the daily on US30, but in terms of sort of continuation moves and sort of how it can look to continue and progress, we had a nice sell to buy on the 4-hour. Price came into it nicely over here and given a good rejection upwards. So ultimately, I think if we can look for more bullish movement, that would be probably the wiser decision. Whether it wants to take up more liquidity below this low, getting into this imbalance region over here on the 30-minute, you know, there's quite a large zone still here that has not been respected. So definitely be worth looking into that area there. we can see that it definitely took liquidity out below this previous low here, sell to buy manipulation, and price slowly coming back into that area. So if that's what it wants to do, then potentially if you see price come all the way back down into here, and then we'll be looking for further buy side. Now in terms of the sell side, we can see definitely some sort of supply zone that was in here on the drop base drop. So the drop base drop, which takes out this previous demand, which caused this higher high. Price first mitigation into there was quite nice, gave a good drop down, good indication that it's going to be a nice zone, and as it returns back to that zone, we have had another nice rejection down. Not quite, I don't think there's a major break of structure. Obviously on the 1 minute time frame you're going to see breaks of structure, so unless it gets into sort of this area in here for that sell, that's where I'd be looking for potential sells. Actually scrap that, I think I'll probably be looking firstly within this one here, because this does look like a more of a manipulation move, and as we sort of see what has happened with price in here, we've had these roughly equal highs in there. As I zoom in, you'll be able to see it a lot more clearer. You know, these roughly equal highs this wick and this wick, and then, you know, these couple highs in here. Buy to sell manipulation, it spiked into this imbalance area over here and dropped down again, and we have sort of just continuously started to move down and gone below this low now. So that'll be the first one, and if that fails, then there is a little one just above it in here as well to be looking into in terms of supply. So definitely worth setting some alerts around there as well. Yeah, that looks pretty good for US30. We've covered both sides now, I think, in terms of the buys and the sells. So yeah, that looks pretty good. And moving on to Nasdaq, of course it's going to look pretty similar because, you know, indices are all pretty closely related. And the first thing I'm clocking, obviously I'm not done a top down on this yet, but the 15 minute on here has given such a nice reaction down. This looks like it's going to be still bearish off first glance. So obviously we've had liquidity above there, buy to sell manipulation, price has come back into there nicely and then dropped down in that first reaction down. So that's initially what I'm seeing on the smaller time frames. Obviously on the daily time frame, we can see this sell to buy in there. Let's just quickly check that on the 4 hour. There's going to be something in here which we need to look at properly. So let's see. Well, these are the smaller time frames. So yeah, definitely whatever accumulation happened in here, that's caused this huge movement upwards. So we need to definitely see what happens within there in terms of demand. That looks pretty good. 30 minute, as you can see, there's lower imbalance fills and all this sort of stuff to look at as well. So let's mark those on as well, roughly around there. Now if that is a good sell position that we can get even off this retracement down, then we see it come back up, and then if we can look to get some sort of sell around that area, we could look to target all the way down into here, and that is going to be about 400 points, which is massive for any indices. So you know, that'll be a really nice trade to sort of look to get into, providing that's what's going to be happening. So ideally we've got that already, a nice movement down from obviously this 5 minute, as you can see in there, buy to sell manipulation. Very clean mitigation up into there, good drop down, and as we sort of start to see how far it's come up already, it's come up to there already, and the only imbalance left open, it's you know, this one in here, I'd say, on the 1 minute. And as you can see, there was that drop, reaccumulation as these two candles come up, and then the further drop off, which breaks structure nicely under this, which created that higher high, and this one which created this higher high. So that area is going to be quite key as well. Definitely want to see if price retraces into there, gives distribution for it to further give a further sell off. So that's pretty nice. And ending things off on SPX probably is going to be pretty much similar. But as you can see on the daily time frame, this buy to sell candle for the supply zone, it's gone up there quite aggressively, but it is starting to give those drops down as well. So very key zone we're looking into, whether it's looking to get slightly higher within this daily zone, that's fair enough. Obviously on the 2 hour time frame we can see right in there, you know, potentially in there for the start of that buy to sell, and then potentially in here for that imbalance fill. And as we look at it into the 1 hourlies, the hourly time frame as well, you can start to see it in a bit more detail. So basically this rough area, if it can get up into that area again and then look to give distribution, so basically looking to take out this high and then looking to distribute. That's going to be the sort of bias we're looking at for SPX in there. And of course on the flip side, looking at the bullish side of things, I think we're simply just going to be looking like we've just discussed on the other two indices. Obviously the daily drop base rally in there, but I think what might be a bit more accurate is going to be the hourly time frame in here. That would be pretty much, I think that looks a bit nicer in terms of a demand zone, so definitely be looking in there, and I'll put an alert here so we know when it gets close. But yeah, looking for accumulation in that region there looks pretty nice. Obviously there's a lot of imbalance in here, so ideally whichever way it decides to move first, and most likely I think it probably will be bearish. If it does come down in here all the way down first for this demand zone, or if it's ready to go up to distribute a bit higher up, then we'll have to wait and see. But of course, as always, we're going to be looking to trade these things accordingly. Yeah, I think that pretty much wraps it up in terms of SPX and the market outlook in general. So there we have that full breakdowns of the pairs and indices that I'm looking at for this week. I'll say it again, if you're someone that wants to actually start benefiting from these sorts of calls along with live trading calls before they're actually released on YouTube, then you know the drill. Please do just drop me a message on my Instagram saying mentorship, and we'll discuss things further. But with that being said, if you guys enjoyed this video and found value, then please do give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe if you're new around here. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next video for more of that trading source.